This is Game Night with Josh Hennig on 97.3 ESPN and the free mobile app. Now, live from the Matt Blatt Kia Studios.
What a move!
Here's Josh Hennig.
Josh Hennig here on Game Night on 97.3 ESPN, a Hump Day Wednesday edition of the show. Glad to have you on board, hanging out with you live in the Matt Blatt Kia Studios on 97.3 ESPN. Of course, 97.3ESPN.com and the 97.3 ESPN mobile app. Busy show to get to for you today. We'll get into some Eagles with Dave Weinberg coming up for a Weinberg Wednesday at 6:15 p.m. because the Eagles just can't seem to stay out of the spotlight and the news. Then Sixers back in action tonight, a back-to-back tonight versus the Milwaukee Bucks. 7 o'clock is the coverage on 97.3 ESPN. Kevin McCormick will join us for a little update on the Sixers as we look ahead into a very interesting game between two teams that during the preseason we thought would be one thing, and the season has played out a little bit differently, to say the least. So we got a lot to get to, and again, your text 609-403-0973. Get on the conversation, and of course, you can watch the show live on Facebook, YouTube, and Twitter at 973 ESPN on all social media platforms. So with the NFL season off-season officially starting today. Today is the first day of the 2021 NFL League season. A lot of things happening. I want to start, though, with what happened in the last 2 hours, which is the Carson Wentz trade is official, it's consummated, it's a done deal, it's a finished product, or at least so we thought. If you thought that the Carson Wentz saga was done, if you thought that this story was underwater under the bridge, there's a cliffhanger at the end of this episode to make you watch next week, and that is this. Carson Wentz will not speak or take questions at his press conference from the Philadelphia media tomorrow. And as a, shall I say, retroactive flex by the Eagles came out and made their own statements about the Carson Wentz trade officially today. And I think it's interesting that they have made a statement, and yet we still haven't heard almost anything from Wentz outside of the normal generic blah out there. Now, of course, half the statement on the website by the Eagles is stuff like, we appreciated his time with us. We thank him. We wish him the best. But you got to scroll down. You got to start filtering down through the story when you really figure out what they're trying to tell you without coming out and overtly saying it. Here is the quote from Howie Roseman. Quote, "We had some conversations with Wentz and his representatives about what was the best thing to go forward. And when we were doing the coaching search, communicating with him and his agent, really good, productive conversations, really good people. And they talked about maybe it was time for him to have a fresh start, that he was looking forward to a fresh start. For us," this is Howie Roseman going on, "we've got to do what's in the best interest of our team. And so if it didn't work for us, it wasn't a situation where we thought we would be benefiting and he was put in a good spot. That was the only situation that would work for the Philadelphia Eagles. As we went through it and went through the offers that we got, particularly the offer from the Colts, the opportunity to not only get picks, but also financial flexibility back for a football team, we decided to move forward. It was the right decision going forward for us." So let's touch on that real quick. This is the same Howie Roseman that an article was written over the weekend by Jeff McLean, and there's an article from the USA Today from 2012 that both say that Howie Roseman communicates. He gets along with people. You probably might think it's a surprise when Howie Roseman's having a conversation with Wentz's people. Hey, looking forward to, going with a new head coach, giving Wentz a fresh start. And then the agent turns around and says, yeah, Carson wants to be traded. He wants out of town. Oh, okay. I was under the impression that, fresh start meant get a new head coach for him, but he doesn't even want to be here. All right. Interesting little twist there that one side thinks one thing and another side is thinking something completely different. In the Eagles' mind, a fresh start means new head coach. Carson Wentz thinks fresh start means out of town. Then is the interesting part of this story. Howie Roseman goes on to say the following quote: "Everyone does things differently, and I think one of the things that we have had success with is having relationships with our players and having open communication with our players. That doesn't work for everyone. I understand that. But at the same time, that makes it even harder to let them go in those times when you grow this kind of attachment to them. You have all these conversations you have had with them, and you know their families. But at the end of the day, understanding that he felt it was best for him to get a fresh start, understanding that it's hard to win the National Football League, and to win, you have to recruit people who are all tied together and invested in what's going on here." Whoa! First of all, if you don't sense the little passive aggressiveness in there, then I think you and I don't know human beings, okay? There's some serious passive aggressiveness in there. Howie Roseman is sitting here saying that I believe in communication, I believe in developing relationships. And then he goes on to say, that doesn't work for everyone. Are you trying to tell me that Wentz had no interest in communicating with you? Then Roseman goes on to say, it makes it even harder to let people go when you grow this sort of attachment to them and you have conversations with them. You know what this sounds like? This sounds like a relationship where two people are in completely different universes when it comes to their understanding of the situation. Howie Rose was under the impression that everything was cool, everything was good. I've communicated with you, I tell you everything that I'm doing, I've met your family, I know everything about you. And then Wentz had a completely different perspective on the situation. And it seems to be that Wentz is not interested in confrontation. So the Eagles were communicating with him. The Eagles wanted to keep him, but Wentz didn't want to be here. I mean, that is a strong thing to put out there. On the same day that the report came down from Les Bowen, who's covered the Eagles for 20 plus years now, says that the Indianapolis Colts, for the introductory press conference for Wentz tomorrow, will not take any questions for Wentz from the Philly media. Man, let me tell you something. If Carson Wentz is that uninterested in facing the music, I hope the Colts are okay. I really do. Man, the Colts have a guy who doesn't want to deal with confrontation, who doesn't want to communicate in a way that could possibly cause anything, any type of issues, any type of problems, any type of upset stomach emotionally. I mean, you literally have Roseman saying that I wanted to communicate with this guy, and this guy didn't want to communicate with me, and that I want to talk to him about having a fresh start, and he says, I want out of town. You know, this is not an indictment on Howie Roseman. This is a indictment on, I should say, on Carson Wentz. This guy doesn't want to take tough questions. This guy doesn't want to communicate with the media. He doesn't want to communicate with his own bosses. He doesn't want to deal with people. He just wants his agent to do his dirty work. He doesn't want to be held accountable. Man, I understand that people are saying that Carson Wentz doesn't want to be mean or anything like that. I think Carson Wentz is very confused when it comes to how to handle himself professionally. I think Carson Wentz is very confused about what it means to live your life a certain way. Because I'm telling you right now, Carson Wentz doesn't seem to understand that there's a problem here. He really does not seem to understand that this is not how you're supposed to act. I'm not saying that the Eagles did everything right. I'm not saying the Eagles are perfect. But what I am saying is I find it very peculiar that one side was interested in communicating and the other had zero interest. I don't think that can be simply stated. I don't think that's a coincidence. I think there's something there. I think there's something there that says a lot about Wentz. It says a lot about the situation. And you know what? My initial reaction is good riddance. Be gone. Don't be here. Because if you don't want to be here and you don't want to communicate with people and you don't want to deal with people like a mature adult does, then be gone. Good riddance. And again, this is not the Eagles do everything right, the Eagles know what they're doing thing. No, this is I'm shocked that this is the situation that we're dealing with here. That's what this is to me. We're going to get more in the Eagles situation, a lot surrounding the Eagles right now. Dave Weinberg for a Weinberg Wednesday coming up next here on Game Night on 97.3 ESPN. And then we got Kevin McCormick joining us coming up at 6:40 p.m. tonight. Game Night being brought to my friends over at FanDuel Sportsbook. One thing I love about betting on basketball is there's always finding new player props and game lines that I like. And what's cool about FanDuel Sportsbook is you can combine those props with other bets from the same game and score an even bigger payout. It's called a same game parlay, and you can only get it with FanDuel Sportsbook. Player props, money lines, spreads, over-unders. You can combine it all in to one bet. Small buy-in on a big payout with same-game parlays. And don't forget about same-game parlay insurance. You get up to $25 back if one leg falls short on your same-game parlay. So download the FanDuel Sportsbook app today and sign up with my promo code Hennig to try same-game parlays. That's promo code Hennig when you sign up with FanDuel Sportsbook. Must be 21 or older to play and present in New Jersey or PA. Refund issued as non-withdrawable site credit that expires in 7 days. Max refund $25. See sportsbook.fanduel.com for full terms, conditions, and details. Gambling problem? Call 1-800-GAMBLER. More Eagles talk with Dave Weinberg next here on 97.3 ESPN FM, 97.3 ESPN mobile app powered by First Bank of Seattle City. And we are live on Facebook, YouTube, and Twitter where you can watch the show. Just follow 97.3 ESPN.
You're listening to Game Night with Josh Hennig on 97.3 ESPN and the free mobile app.
Josh Hennig here on Game Night on 97.3 ESPN, 97.3 ESPN.com, and of course, the 97.3 ESPN mobile app powered by First Bank of Seattle City. Joining us right now, as he does each and every week on the Boardwalk Out Hotline for a Weinberg Wednesday, get more into what's going on with the Eagles and the NFL. It is Dave Weinberg, longtime Eagles veteran writer. You check out his extra point columns over at 973ESPN.com, at Dave Weinberg 19 on Twitter. Dave, how you doing today?
I'm doing well, Josh. Happy St. Patrick's Day.
Happy St. Patrick's Day. I have a tiny bit of green in my black shirt, so there you go.
Oh, there you go. Okay, you dress for the occasion then?
Semi, yeah. I actually don't have anything green aside from the green in this shirt. So my wardrobe is very, very basic. It's basically black, gray, and red. So there you go.
Hey, stick with the basics. That's all right.
Yeah. Well, one team that doesn't stick with the basics, I was saying to you, they find new ways to put themselves back in the news, are the Eagles. And, I thought, today, maybe they make a signing, maybe they make a transaction. But the moment Carson Wentz officially is traded to the Colts, everything goes nuts. And when Howie Roseman insinuates in his press release that I wanted to communicate with Wentz and he didn't want to communicate with me, I mean, that opens up a whole new can of worms where this saga just doesn't want to go away.
Yeah, I mean, you would think they would just let it go and be done with it. He's a Colt now, and that's all well and good. Best of luck to him. But yeah, they just can't let it have like a peaceful party. It always has to be some sort of little dig at one side or the other. Who did what to who ignored who. It's a regular soap opera. It always has been, really.
It's just amazing to me that it happens literally the same day this announcement comes out, that now Les Bowen is saying that the Indianapolis Colts will not let a member of affiliate media ask Wentz any questions
Right.
at his introductory press conference. So I'm not saying the Eagles are perfect, because they're far from perfect, but Wentz still doesn't want to talk about anything, and the Eagles are turning around and saying, oh, yeah, he didn't want to talk to us either. Like, I mean, what does this say to you about the way this situation ended? It feels like a relationship where two people just had no idea how the other person felt about them, and then the one person was just like, I don't want to be in this relationship anymore, and they got blindsided.
Yeah, I mean, he doesn't really need to. There's no requirement that he has to take questions from the Philly media. That would have been the polite thing to do, to just clear the air and have like some sort of explanation as to why things happened the way they did. But evidently, he was hurt or felt betrayed or what have you, and why he thinks that the media was out to get him or whatever, I don't know. But I think they're entitled to some answers. But that's just the way it. He's a new team now. He wants to just talk about the Colts, I guess, and just put Philly behind him in the rearview mirror as much as quick as he can. It's unfortunate that it ended the way it did, because he began with such promise, but for whatever reason, he just never embraced the Philly culture, and the Philly fans really never embraced him. Well, I shouldn't say that. I think they did, but he just never seemed to understand what it takes to play quarterback in the city.
Yeah, and I think part of that, Dave, is because of also his background. You mentioned, and I didn't even touch on that part really the first segment. The fact is that this guy, he comes from a sheltered background. He comes from a very bubbled-in life environment. And you come from that to a place like Philadelphia that is as multicultural and as blue-collar, borderline aggressive as you possibly can be in the United States. I'm sure that there was some days of serious culture shock for him. And, maybe he was just not cut out for it, even though he wore flannel.
I guess that's the case, yeah, Josh. I don't know. I mean, you would have thought the Eagles would have done their due diligence, that they would have, and I guess they thought they did, where you have to find out how a guy's wired, in addition to how he's going to perform on the field and off the field, his work habits or what have you. And as we've discussed before, he lived in North Carolina for a time and basically grew up in North Dakota. And, how many people cover North Dakota State? 1, 2, and going to an Eagles team where, it's one of the biggest, if not the biggest media market in the country as far as coverage of a team goes. So, yeah, I imagine it was overwhelming for him, but I guess the Eagles thought that he'd be able to handle it, and evidently he couldn't.
Dave Weinberg joining us here on the Boardwalk Kind of Hotline here on GameNight on 97.3 ESPN for a Weinberg Wednesday. Follow on Twitter at Dave Weinberg19. Dave, as the Eagles now move forward, first of all, they got under cap compliance in the most bizarre thing I've ever seen in my life. I've never heard of a trade where a guy reverts back to another team and the team that had him completely loses all responsibility for all the money on his contract all of a sudden. So the Eagles, no Marquise Goodwin, they're cap compliant, and it looks like more and more that this team is not going to be big buyers in free agency. But, Dave, they have to get somebody because as of right now, there's only one quarterback on this roster, and that's Jalen Hurts.
Yeah, they're going to have to find a backup. I'm still going to be really surprised if they use that number 6 pick on one. I would think that they're much better off seeking some sort of veteran backup. I've heard Jacoby Brissett's name floated around. I don't know if Nick Foles is out of the picture now. Maybe he's a possibility. But yeah, they need somebody there to mentor Jalen Hurts, to offer just offer some support for him. Let him learn the ropes and be there as a sounding board if he really needs it, and to help him learn the offense. So that would be priority number one. However, I don't know how they're going to swing it as far as their cap situation is concerned. They are compliant under the cap, but they still don't have a whole lot of maneuverability as far as that's concerned.
Yeah, it's interesting, too, because you mentioned Brissett. He went down to Miami, signed with them. Andy Dalton went to Chicago. Ryan Fitzpatrick, I'm assuming, is going to be the starter in Washington. I mean, they're calling it a competition between him and Taylor Heineke, and I think that's a good joke in that press release. But anyway,
Sure.
So to me, I know that some of the bigger veteran backups are out there, but you sold me about a month ago on the idea of Foles coming in here being the backup. Also, another name that's been thrown out there is Alex Smith. So there are guys out there who could come in here and be veteran backups. I'm surprised that they're taking their time with it. You know what I mean?
Yeah, you would have thought that would have been priority number one to get somebody. But, I don't know. I don't know what they're thinking anymore. I mean, I guess their number one priority was just they had to get under the cap by 4 p.m. yesterday, and they managed to do it. So, congrats to them. Or maybe it was today. I don't remember. But anyway, that they have a lot of holes to fill, but that backup quarterback seems like that would be a major priority. I don't think Nate Sudfeld would come back. I don't think he'd want to. But they may have no choice but to re-sign him if they can, because there's, like you said, the window's kind of shrinking here now, and then they seem to be taking their sweet time about it.
Yeah, it's Nate Sudfeld. I would be shocked if Nate Sudfeld was ever an Eagle ever again under any circumstance. But that's just me.
I'm with you there. Yep.
Dave, the other thing the Eagles got to figure out this offseason is, what are they going to do with all these draft picks? Do you think they actually keep they have 11 draft picks now because they got 2 compensation picks. They got another pick because of Marquise Goodwin reverting to the 49ers. So I'm assuming that this team, they may walk into the draft with 11, but I'm assuming they're not walking out with 11 players, right?
No, I wouldn't think so. There's going to be some maneuvering around where they're going to swap picks and try and pick up maybe a veteran or something for a couple late round picks or what have you, or maybe get like some picks next year in exchange for some picks this year. I can't see them making all 11 picks. That's a lot of players and that's a lot of money, and I just don't see how they can. I mean, they certainly could use 11 players, but I don't know. I don't see it happening either. No, I'm with you there.
To me, when I look at the draft as well, I mean, obviously a lot of us love to talk about the draft, but we're mostly focusing on the first round. I have to believe when you have 2 third-round picks and 2 fifth-round picks, that Howie Roseman is going to be active. He has a long history of being active in the draft, and I would just remind people that this organization is not an organization that just doesn't do anything. When they won the Super Bowl, though, the additions of like Garrett Blount and Chris Long, that was that second and third wave of free agency. So, just because they're not doing something on March 17th of 2021 doesn't mean that they're going to just sit on their hands the entire offseason. In fact, I wouldn't be surprised if they did make a couple swings at maybe a couple trades or a couple different things, because that is in their history, right, Dave?
Yeah, Howie's very active. He's not one to sit on his hands at all. You're right. I don't think you'll see the big splash that some other teams might make, but you're right in that they will find a way to add some depth to their team, and who knows, maybe get somebody like you said, like a Garrett Blount or Chris Long or something like that who winds up becoming an important contributor. You're not going to. I'm sure you're not. I don't think you're going to get the superstar kind of necessarily, but you might get one of those bargain basement guys who fits the scheme, fits the culture, and winds up being a pretty good player for them.
Dave Weinberg joining us here on GameNight on 97.3 ESPN. Weinberg Wednesday at Dave Weinberg 19 on Twitter. Check out his extra point columns over at 97.3 ESPN.com. Dave, I want to step off of the Eagles stuff and get to a little bit more of a couple of other sports topics with you.
Sure.
One being, as you've seen the NFL offseason play out, it really feels like that a lot of teams are seemingly very willing to make changes and big changes. In fact, I mean, we saw the Cardinals. I mean, they're adding J.J. Watt, A.J. Green. You see other teams like the Bears basically calling anybody to have a quarterback. Are you surprised a little bit by some of the excessive amount of transactions that have already happened so far?
Not really. I mean, if you're a team that thinks you have a legitimate shot at making a run at a Super Bowl, you think you're a player or two away, then you go after that player, like you saw with Arizona. They think that the NFC Championship is within their grasp, and so they're willing to make that move to go do it. I mean, I was surprised that J.J. Watt moved to the desert. I thought he maybe joined one of his brothers, like in Pittsburgh or something. But more power to him. I guess he saw the opportunity there to allow the Cardinals to be to help the Cardinals become legitimate contenders. So more power to him. I'm a little surprised at the Patriots. All the moves that they've been made, it seems like they're willing to take every tight end in the league. It seems. I'm surprised they didn't get Zach Ertz too. So, but yeah, that's the way of the world in the NFL. If there's a team that really thinks that they have a legitimate shot and they think there's one key cog away, then they're going to go ahead and go after him.
Dave, I was over at Boardwalk Hall over the weekend for the MAC championship, and you're someone who's covered sports in Atlantic City for many, many years, and you've talked about on your Twitter account and on different platforms about there's not going to be the wrestling championships at Boardwalk Hall as it traditionally is each and every year. And I spoke to a couple people who were working security at Boardwalk Hall, and they said something very interesting to me. And obviously they spoke on anonymity, or I wouldn't be able to post it on the website like I did. But they told me that they were surprised that the MAC tournament didn't have more people because they felt they could have had more people in attendance and still have been within protocols, within restrictions, and that the MAC themselves chose to restrict the people in the building. As we know that in New Jersey, you can have, 10% capacity. So, does it feel like a very strange situation with how sports are maybe looking at Atlantic City right now? That's like, hey, you can have fans here, you can have people in the building, but these sports entities are like, thanks, but no thanks.
Yeah, the MAC situation confused me as well, but I think they decided like long before that when New Jersey started to relax their restrictions, they decided that it was just going to be very limited to family and friends. I guess they just wanted to err on the side of caution. The wrestling tournament really befuddles me. They're going to go to Phillipsburg High School for their state championships this year. And I guess it's the same thing where the NJSIA has said that there's a possibility they have like they divided up into 4 regions that lead up to the state championships that are at various high schools. And they're not allowing any fans at any of the region tournaments because apparently there's a couple of high schools that can't support it or whatever. I don't know. But so there's a very real possibility that Boardwalk Hall might not have fans either for the state. I mean, it's not Boardwalk Hall. I'm sorry. Phillipsburg High School might not have fans for the state championships. And if you're Boardwalk Hall, then that makes no sense. I mean, even if they allow like maybe 2 parents or guardians per wrestler, you're talking about under 500 fans total, and that's a waste of time to like say the vendors in Atlantic City. I mean, at Boardwalk Hall, the restaurants, the casinos. I mean, it's really not worth their time and effort. So I can see why they would go to a high school. But your argument is right, though. They should be allowing more fans into these events. And because Boardwalk Hall and Atlantic City, they really needed all the support they can get after what happened, the pandemic and shutting down and stuff.
Yeah, and let's make it clear for everybody listening that this is the decision of the NJSIAA. Governor Murphy already said parents, families, they can go to games within a limited amount of attendance for high school sporting events. So this isn't New Jersey restrictions. This is the NJSIA making a unilateral decision similar to, as you mentioned, the MAC tournament doing. And it just feels so strange that, listen, I understand that we're all living in a certain world right now, but if you can let people be there, even if it's people's parents, let them be there. Let them be there for their kids. I just don't understand this hyper restrictiveness of it in a world where we're already seeing parents were allowed to be at events here. Now the kids basically go in to perform and mom and dad can't be there again.
Yeah, and I don't know if you've ever been to a wrestling match or if you have much experience with that sport on the high school level in New Jersey, but it's very intense, and fans are really into it. They are not going to take kindly to being shut out of seeing their kids go for that state title. I mean, that's a special moment in a kid's life, and if the parents aren't able to witness it, that would be a real shame. And Boardwalk Hall, the state finals there that might be the biggest event in Atlantic City every year. I mean, you're talking like 10,000 fans per session of over 4 sessions or 4 or 5 sessions. So, you're talking 40, 50,000 people. And, to reduce that or to eliminate that, that's a real shame for the city.
Well, hopefully sooner than later we can get some of this stuff cleared up, because it seems like the world is trending in the right direction, with everything with the protocols and the vaccines. But I just feel for these kids. You have kids whose seasons have been stolen from them. You have parents who can't go watch their kids play. The whole situation just kind of rubs me the wrong way. You know what I mean, Dave?
Yeah, I mean, I'll give the leagues and the conferences and the NJSA credit for at least having something. I guess they're trying to make the best of a bad situation, but you're right. I think they kind of erred on the side of caution a little bit too much. I'm not saying, totally open everything and allow the fans to be, stands to be packed, but I do think they could have been a little more compromising and allowing the parents and friends to watch more of the events.
He's Dave Weinberg. Follow him on Twitter at DaveWeinberg19. Check his extra point columns over at 973ESPN.com. And, of course, the podcast, Tequila and Touchdowns with Dave Weinberg and his all guests. He appears, as he does each and every week, on the Boardwalk Honda Hotline. Dave, great stuff today. We'll catch you next week.
All right, Josh. Thanks again. I appreciate it as always.
Josh Hennig here on Game Night on 97.3 ESPN. Don't forget Sixers basketball coming up at the top of the hour. They have fans in the stands. Sixers versus Bucks at 7 p.m. right here on 97.3 ESPN. So coming up next, we'll get back into the Sixers. Kevin McCormick joins us again for a second straight day to talk about what is going on with the Sixers. What did Doc Rivers have to say? All that and more here on 97.3 ESPN FM, 97.3 ESPN mobile app powered by First Bank of CLC for all your extensive Sixers, Flyers, Phillies, Eagles, and high school sports coverage. And don't forget, we are live on Facebook, YouTube, and Twitter. Just follow 973 ESPN to watch the Sports Bash with Mike Gill. Game Night with yours truly, Josh Hennig, and more here on 973 ESPN.
Now, more Game Night with Josh Hennig on 97.3 ESPN and the free mobile app.
Josh Hennig here on Game Night on 97.3 ESPN. Sixers basketball coming up about 18 minutes from now. Tom McGinnis on the call right here on your home for Sixers basketball in South Jersey, 97.3 ESPN. Our Sixers pregame coverage being brought to you by Trifecta Therapeutics in Glassboro, South Jersey's premier sports rehabilitation and physical therapy center, treating the pros and the Joes. Visit them online at trifectatherapeutics.com. Joining us for day 2 of his Sixers coverage here on Game Night here on 97.3 ESPN. On the Boardwalk Honda Hotline, Kevin McCormick joins us live in the virtual flesh here on Facebook, YouTube, and Twitter. You can watch the show right here on 97.3 ESPN. Kevin, how you doing today?
Josh, I'm doing good. I'm flattered that I get to be back for the second straight night.
Well, you might be the only person who would actually accept that request for 2 straight nights. So I don't know if you should be flattered, if I should be flattered. So there you go. How about that?
All right, fair. We'll both be flattered. How about that?
Obviously, a interesting win for the Sixers last night. A game where I didn't expect the Knicks to do what they did last night. Without two guard. They get played a lot of minutes. Guys like Derrick Rose, they play a lot of minutes, and I expected more from Emmanuel quickly. He didn't do that much last night. It was basically Julius Randle and random dudes out there giving the Sixers fits, and the Sixers found a way to win. Kevin, how important is it this Sixers team is finding ways to win, and arguably games that they might not have been able to find ways to win previously?
I think it just shows the growth, from the group as a whole. It also shows the impact that Doc Rivers had as well. There's been a lot of games this season, like you said, that this team typically does not win in the past that they've won this year. And I think part of it is just with Doc Rivers running the helm and just the impact he's brought and his ability to lead and, to have these guys willingly fight night in and night out and basically feel like every game is within reach, because in reality it is. There's been plenty of games this season where the game's been on the seesaw going down the stretch, and no matter who the opponent's been, the Sixers have been able to get stops and they've been able to get good looks on offense. So with the way they've been playing in the crunch so far this season, it's really kind of hard to say they're out of any game when they're within striking distance in the closing minutes.
Also, the other big thing that came out last night was, again, another game where Tobias Harris plays strong down the stretch. And Paul Hudrick brought up earlier that, Tobias Harris has always been a guy who can finish, but it's like he's become more physical this year. He's become more aggressive. And you mentioned Doc Rivers. How much of it do you believe is Doc? How much do you believe is Tobias's evolution and what we're seeing from Tobias on the court? Because I feel like they both have some shared responsibility in this evolution.
I think it's both. We touched on it a little bit last night talking about Tobias Harris and getting back under Doc Rivers and playing his natural position and how that kind of helped blossom his game this season compared to last season. And the other part of it, I think, is more just kind of like Joel Embiid. Tobias Harris is right in that age range where he's stepping into his prime as well. This is a guy who's bounced around the league for his entire career, and he's finally found a home here in Philadelphia where he's had multiple seasons to continue to build on his game with most of the same group of players around him. So I think it's just him getting comfortable here in Philadelphia, now it being his third season, his second full season, and being back with a coach who understands his game, understands what he likes to do, and continually puts him in a position to just succeed on a nightly basis.
Now, you mentioned succeed on a nightly basis. Let's hit on that real quick. You mentioned the fact he's been here now for 3 years. He has bounced around the league so much. I have to think that for a guy like him to be able to stay in one place for any length of time, that's got to be a huge part of the growth for him. It's not just his age, but it's the fact that he can say, I'm not being traded at the trade deadline for the 200th time.
I think it's a confidence thing as well. When he got that 5-year extension, not only did he get a substantial contract, but it also said a team finally came to him and said, hey, we know you've done all this bouncing around. We want you to be a key piece to our team, not just for 1 to 2 seasons, but for the long stretch while we feel this window is open. So I think kind of having that in his back pocket as well has really helped, just of that, like you said, the comfortability of just knowing that when the trade deadline rolls around, he's not going to get flipped again, that he's under contract for multiple seasons, and that he's finally found a home here in the league after bouncing around. I feel like he's played for at least 7 different teams so far. It's hard to keep track.
Kevin McCormick joining us here on GameNight on 97.3 ESPN. Sixers versus Bucks tonight. Very, very different matchup from what we saw last night with the Knicks. The Bucks obviously have firepower. Now, they're not the Bucks of old. They're not the team that they're usually like super dominant regular seasons. But this is still a very dangerous Bucks team. And this is the first time they're playing, Kevin. So what are your thoughts going into this game tonight?
I could see it kind of being just a feeling out game. Obviously, you're not going to get the real aspect of it, but this is one of those games where both teams are going to be looking at it as kind of a measuring stick, just because the Bucks are starting to really, hit their groove, and they've been playing well. Giannis is quietly inserting himself back into the MVP talk with the way he's played, and these are two teams that are looked at the top of the Eastern Conference and real threats to represent the East in the finals. So although the Sixers are going to be without Embiid, I think each team is really going to be dialed into this game to see just how well they match up with each other, because this realistically could be a matchup that we see in either the second round of the playoffs or in the conference finals.
Now, assuming that Giannis and Simmons basically cancel each other out, assuming that Middleton and Tobias are going to do their thing, who are the guys after those main two on each team that you're keeping an eye on most tonight for this game?
On each side, I would have to say Drew Holiday and Seth Curry. Drew Holiday, obviously, because he's their third best player. He's arguably, probably the second best two-way guy behind Giannis. He's kind of been that nice third peg that has really helped uplift their game since he returned back to the lineup. And then Seth Curry, he's going to be looked at to kind of take on a bigger role offensively now with Joel gone. There's going to be more shots to go around, and he's definitely a guy that I have circled that should get an increase in looks, especially with how well he's played. I thought he played phenomenal against the Knicks. It's good to see him finally just getting those looks and not really hesitating and just kind of chucking them up from three, because that's something they're going to need, and he's going to need to keep defenses honest now with Ben Simmons running the show. It's going to be a lot more downhill. Same thing with Tobias, whether it's working in the pick and roll or him just getting downhill in transition. There's going to be a lot of pressure on the rim from those two, and having him out there being a willing shooter, no matter what the situation is, not always trying to find that perfect shot, is going to be very big in the coming weeks.
You mentioned that shot. I know that Doc Rivers spoke about Seth Curry as well. during his pregame conversation with you guys in the media. It really feels like that the guys who are the floor spacers, Curry, Korkmaz, Green, they're playing better, especially here after the All-Star break. I'm not saying that this is a finished product, obviously, as a roster, but it has to be at least encouraging for the Sixers to look around and be like, I know I could pass the guy the ball, and he's going to catch it and most likely make it more often than not.
Yeah, Furkan Korkmaz has kind of been up and down all season, so I think you kind of just take his hot streaks for what it's worth. But seeing Seth Curry return to form, I think is something that's very big moving forward, even bigger with Joel Embiid out, just because we've talked about it before. Before he went down with COVID, this is a guy that was averaging 17, 18 a night, was a 50, 40, 90 guy almost with his eyes closed. So the fact that he's getting back to that guy, he's showing the willingness to throw it from deep. He's still working well in the pick and roll, which is him and Tony Bradley have been a very nice pairing in the pick and roll in the half court, which has been a very nice surprise. And just him being a reliable guy to just go get you a bucket, whether he's putting it on the floor or just being a catch and shoot guy. So although the Furkan Korkmaz hot streak is nice, seeing Seth Curry start to look like the Seth Curry of the beginning of this season is a very promising sign.
Now, speaking of surprising, I didn't realize this until I heard this earlier today. Kevin, we are 8 days from the NBA trade deadline. I mean, I feel like it just snuck up on us. I feel like we were talking for so many weeks about the trades, and now it's like it's 8 days away. You're like, 8 days away? Wait, what? Like, you're kind of like flipping around, looking around. I have to wonder, though, is what we've seen with the Sixers lately a sign in terms of Danny Green's minutes, for example, if he may not be here after the deadline? Is there a possibility they're purposely already, I don't want to say phasing him out, but planning for a world without Danny Green?
I don't know, just because he's still a guy I have circled that is going to show his value come the postseason. Doc Rivers even said it, I forget which game it was before last week, but he said that Danny always finds himself on winning teams, and that's not exactly a coincidence. So I think Doc Rivers still values what he brings from a veteran perspective and just what he's done in the past. And we've brought it up before. He's a guy that's done it all. He understands what it takes to win a championship. So when the postseason rolls around, I think he's a guy that this team is really going to lean on. It may change the aspect of how they approach the deadline of maybe you want to go and get a guy that can cut into his minutes a little bit. I think he's near or close to a career high in minutes per game, which isn't exactly ideal for a guy in his 12th season. But seeing Matisse Thybulle continue to blossom on offense is a great sign. But I really feel outside of getting Kyle Lowry, I don't know if there's that key player out there that the Sixers will be willing to give up Danny Green for in a trade.
He's Kevin McCormick. Follow him on Twitter at KevinMCC973. Check out his all of his work over at 973ESPN.com. Sixers versus Bucks tonight, 7 o'clock right here on 97.3 ESPN. Tom McGinnis on the call. And as all guests, Kevin McCormick appeared in the virtual flesh on the Boardwalk kind of hotline here on Game Night on 97.3 ESPN. Kevin, enjoy the game, and hopefully the Sixers can pull out another win without Embiid.
Should be good. Thanks a lot, Josh. You have a good night.
Josh Hennig here on Game Night. And, of course, Game Night's coverage of Sixers basketball being brought to you by Trifecta Therapeutics in Glassboro, South Jersey's premier sports rehabilitation and physical therapy center, treating the pros and the Joes. Visit them at trifectatherapeutics.com. Also, don't forget about my friends over at FanDuel Sportsbook. That's right, FanDuel Sportsbook. There's always that one team that ruins your bracket. That's why this year I'm betting the tournament on FanDuel Sportsbook, America's #1 sportsbook. Because on FanDuel, your first bet is risk-free. It doesn't matter who you are betting on. New users get up to $1,000 in site credit back if your first bet doesn't win. With all the games day and night, FanDuel has an easy-to-use app with fast withdrawals, daily odds boost, and if that's not enough, FanDuel wants to make you a millionaire. That's right, you. They're giving away $1 million to one lucky bettor. New and existing users get an additional shot at the payout every day you bet the tourney. So if you want a shot at becoming a millionaire or even a thousandaire, download the FanDuel Sportsbook app, use my promo code Hennig, and get your first risk-free bet and a shot at becoming a millionaire. That's promo code Hennig with FanDuel Sportsbook. Must be 21 or to play. Present in NJ or PA. Restrictions apply for $1 million drawing. Risk-free offer for online real money wager only. You cannot bet on local college teams in Virginia and New Jersey. See full terms and conditions at sportsbook.fanduel.com. Gambling problem? Call 1-800-GAMBLER. All right, we jammed a lot into that show. A lot to fit in. We fit it all in. Josh Hennig here on Game Night on 97.3 ESPN. I'm going to rapid fire these comments on YouTube right now at 973 ESPN YouTube. Jeff Bowden Pookie says, I hope we draft a running back. Here's the thing. Do you really need a running back? I mean, Miles Sanders showed you that he can be a running back. Now, if you want to draft one guy maybe like in the 4th or 5th round who can be, a quality guy, I'm okay with that. Jarrett says over on YouTube, Tobias Harris is the most underrated player in Philadelphia. That's an interesting conversation. Is there anybody more underrated what they bring to their team than Tobias Harris in Philadelphia? We'll get into that tomorrow, Jared. Thanks for the question. Josh Hennig, this is Game Night. I'll catch you tomorrow.